So now that we saw now a third game for Oklahoma, the season has followed script pretty well, and even gone better than scripted. Um, watching that Nebraska game and comparing it to what I saw Oklahoma do against Nebraska last year, I don't know if it's just strictly strength and conditioning, but I think I can notice a difference in just this team being more physical, tougher, stronger.
Yeah, I think Mark, you're right. I think it's a combination of a couple of things. Yeah, I think the strength and conditioning was critical, but I think the mentality that this coaching staff brought in was has really been a big part of it as well, and what they went through. This was a much tougher camp than Oklahoma has traditionally had. Much more physical. There's a lot more tackling on the defensive side of the ball, a lot more just being able to showcase that strength and toughness between both the offensive and defensive lines. So, yeah, I think that mentality has brought forward a new sense of urgency and just how physical they need to be on both lines of scrimmage. Look, when you look at a guy like Brent Venables, he's been in these national championship games. He's won national championships. He knows, at least on the defensive side of the ball, what it's going to take for Oklahoma to be competitive and win a playoff game or win a national championship. So, all due respect to Lincoln Riley and the previous regime, they've not really been a part of those playoff wins and playoff games. And so, in terms of being able to win a national championship, so I think bringing that culture that he's brought forward from Clemson, I think has been super incredible. I think Miguel Chavis is a guy that has continued to provide dividends for because there was a lot coming into the season, Mark. I think, and still remains to be seen how that continues to go from a defensive end perspective. But I think that the ends, there was a lot of concern with how Oklahoma would be able to rush the passer, at least from that end perspective. So you've got Reggie Grimes, who is a guy that I think 3.5 sacks through 3 games, who's continued to play really well. Didn't have a lot of numbers against Nebraska, but his ability to just not be moved is really doing is really a great thing for the overall structure of the defense. But you see a lot better physicality. You see the fact that they're tackling much better in space, and you see, what reminds me, Mark, the last time that I really remember this defense just ultimately punishing teams was the last one that really comes to mind is I think 2011 when Oklahoma played at Florida State. They played incredibly physical in that game. Had a couple of turnovers. I think they had there was a targeting penalty, but I don't know if you remember that hit around the goal line where a Florida State wide receiver kind of knocked his helmet off, and they just really had a sense of physicality and playing tough and playing very, very physical, and so you haven't really seen that until I think Saturday was the first time that you've really seen that. You've seen a little bit of it the first couple of games, but opening up the playbook allowed that to happen, to play fast, to play physical, and play really hard-nosed football on the defensive side. So I think, again, long season to go, but I think so even coming into this game, Mark, I kind of thought the respect that I had for the Nebraska defense, I thought that they would probably get into the low 20s in this game. And I wouldn't necessarily say it was a bad defensive performance for Oklahoma, even if they were able to, give up 21 points in this game. But the fact that they gave up 7 legitimate points in the game is really just a testament to how far they've come along early on in the season. And I think the same can be said for the offensive line. They've gotten their bits of being condemned in terms of how well that they've played even early on in the season, but they were much better than they've been in the past, particularly up the middle. Nebraska's not great, not great across the offensive line, but particularly their tackles. Um, you know, I'm sorry, their ends aren't great, but in the middle of the defense, they're pretty good. And for Oklahoma to be able to run as well as they were between the tackles, I think is another good sign for Oklahoma coming into this game. But if particularly for Oklahoma's offensive line, if we're saying some of the same things, if they're able to run the ball for over 200 yards against Kansas State, I think that's something that you can say, okay, this offensive line is coming together. They're playing really well as a unit, and maybe the missing link was having Wanye Morris back there with the rest of the interior of that line playing a lot better together.